The stench of too many alien species crammed into one space hit Adan Cross with the force of a tactical grenade. His nostrils flared in disgust as the holding cell door slid open with a mechanical hiss. Two Vulgari guards, hulking creatures with scaled skin the color of rust, flanked him, their four-fingered hands clasping energy restraints that bit into his wrists. His muscles tensed instinctively, the special forces training still ingrained in his nervous system, despite weeks of captivity. "Move, human," the taller guard grunted, shoving Adan forward with enough force to make him stumble. "Important buyers today. Maybe someone wants soft pet." Adan swallowed the urge to respond. 6 years in Earth's Interstellar Defense Corps had taught him when to fight and when to wait. And right now, with his hands bound and his body weakened from insufficient nutrition calibrated for human physiology, waiting was his only option. The auction block of Nexus Prime was infamous throughout the known galaxy. A neutral trading post where anything and anyone could be bought for the right price. After Earth had reluctantly joined the Galactic Federation, following the Proxima War laws protecting humans were still nebulous at best. Loopholes existed, and black market traders like the ones who had ambushed his scout vessel were experts at exploiting them. Lot 247, announced the auction master, a spindly Quaros, with translucent skin that revealed the pulsing of its 3 hearts. Terran male specimen intact, previously military trained, according to neural scans. Limited shelf life compared to superior stock, but novelty value is high, since the recent Federation treaty. Adan squinted as bright lights exposed him on the raised platform. Before him stretched a vast semicircular hall filled with the galaxy's elite collectors, aristocrats, scientists, and the morbidly curious. Their faces were a blur of colors, textures, and anatomical variations that still disoriented him, despite his xenobiological training. Starting bid 50,000 galactic credits. The auctioneer continued its voice, resonating through implanted translators. Silence fell across the chamber. "Fragile species," someone called out from the darkness. "Dies too easily." Primitive neural network added another voice, this one high and chittering. "No telepathic capabilities." The auctioneer's inner organs pulsed in what Adan had learned was agitation. 45,000 credits. This specimen has unusually adaptive cellular structure. Potential research applications. More silence. $40,000. The physical resilience of this species is actually quite remarkable for their structural limitations. Adan stood straighter, a bitter smile crossing his lips. So this was humanity's worth in the cosmic marketplace, a curiosity nobody wanted to invest in. Part of him felt relieved. Perhaps they would release him if no buyer came forward. The more cynical part knew that release in this context likely meant being sold for parts to xenobiological researchers. $35,000. Surely someone sees value in 1 million credits. The voice cut through the murmuring crowd like a plasma blade. Deep, feminine, with a harmonic quality that seemed to resonate at multiple frequencies simultaneously. The auction hall fell completely silent. "Identify bidder." The auctioneer requested its translucent skin, now pulsing rapidly with excitement. The crowd parted, and Adan felt his breath catch in his throat. Striding toward the auction platform was a figure of impossible elegance. Tall, at least 7 feet, with skin that seemed to shimmer between alabaster and silver, depending on how the light struck it. Her features were angular, almost severe in their perfection, framed by hair that appeared to be made of living darkness, moving slightly, even in the still air of the chamber. Most striking were the wings, not the feathered appendages of Earth's avian species, but sleek, membranous structures that folded gracefully against her back, their surface gleaming with an iridescent sheen that suggested both biological and technological components. Queen Virel of the sovereign Elvari Empire announced an attendant who scrambled alongside her. "Ruler of the 7 systems of Elisar." The auctioneer's voice trembled as it spoke. "Your Majesty honors us with her presence. 1,000,000 credits is the current bid for the human specimen. Does anyone— 2,000,000, the queen interrupted, her opalescent eyes fixed on Adon with an intensity that made his skin prickle. And I will not be outbid. Prepare him for transport to my vessel. The auctioneer hesitated only momentarily before bringing down its ceremonial staff. Sold to Her Majesty Queen Virel of Elisar. As the guards moved to escort him off the platform, Adon heard the whispers ripple through the crowd. A human, why would the queen want such a thing? The Elvari consider themselves genetic perfection. Why would she sully her court with a primitive species? But the whisper that chilled Adon most came from a robed figure near the platform's edge. She wants him. The sovereign does nothing without purpose. That human is either very lucky or very doomed. The royal transport ship cut through space like a predatory creature, its organic metallic hybrid hull responding to the neural commands of its Elvari pilots. From his holding chamber, luxurious compared to his previous cell, but still unmistakably a prison, Adon watched the stars blur through a viewport that adjusted its opacity to protect his human eyes. The door slid open without warning, and Adon turned to find a slender Elvari female entering. Unlike the queen, her wings were smaller, their coloration a muted bronze, rather than the deep obsidian of royalty. Her eyes held the same opalescent quality, but shifted toward azure rather than the queen's silvery hue. I am Dr. Nyla, royal physician to Her Majesty. She announced, her harmonics more subdued than the queen's commanding tones. I need to assess your physical condition before we reach Elisar. Adon nodded cautiously. I'm Adon Cross, though I suppose my name doesn't matter much now. Dr. Nyla tilted her head slightly. On the contrary, your designation is part of your biological identity construct. It matters considerably. She approached with a device that resembled a crystalline spider. This will not harm you. It merely analyzes cellular integrity and neural patterns. The device hovered over his skin, emitting a soft blue light. You're the first human I've examined directly, she continued. I've studied your species, of course. Fascinating evolutionary compromises. So inefficient in some ways, yet. She paused, her eyes narrowing as she studied the device's readings. Surprising adaptability. Why did she buy me? Adon asked bluntly. Dr. Nyla's wings twitched slightly, a reaction Adon couldn't interpret. Her Majesty's motives are her own. I merely ensure the health of those under her care. I'm not under her care. I'm her property, Adon corrected, unable to keep the bitterness from his voice. The physician's expression remained neutral. The distinction may not be as clear as you believe, human. On Elisar, value and ownership have different connotations than in your culture. She retrieved the scanning device. Your nutritional needs will be accommodated, and your quarters on Elisar prepared, according to human physiological requirements. As she turned to leave, Adon called after her. Dr. Nyla, am I going to be dissected? She paused at the doorway, her wings folding tighter against her back. Not all acquisitions are for destruction, Adon Cross. Some are for creation. With that cryptic statement, she left him alone with the stars. The journey to Elisar took 3 Earth days, during which Adon was visited only by silent attendants who brought him food calibrated for human consumption and provided him with clothing made from a material that adjusted to his body temperature. On the final day, as the ship began its descent, a new visitor arrived, one whose presence immediately filled the chamber with tension. I am General Koro, commander of the Royal Elvari Guard, the imposing figure announced without preamble. His wings were massive, their span nearly brushing both walls, when partially extended their coloration, a deep crimson that seemed to absorb rather than reflect the chamber's light. You will accompany me to the surface. Unlike Dr. Nyla's clinical curiosity, General Koro's gaze held nothing but contempt. Her Majesty's interest in your kind is an aberration, a momentary curiosity that will pass. Remember your place, human. And what place is that? Adon asked, rising to his full height, still a head shorter than the Elvari warrior. "Whatever Her Majesty decrees," Koro responded coldly. "Though I would have left your kind on the auction block where you belong." As they disembarked, Adan got his first view of Elisar, and despite his situation, he couldn't suppress a gasp of wonder. The planet's surface shimmered with colors that had no names in human language structures that seemed to grow rather than be built, curving upward in impossible geometries that somehow maintained perfect harmony. The atmosphere had a crystalline quality, as though the very air contained microscopic prisms that fractured sunlight into spectral patterns. The royal palace dominated the landscape not by its size, though it was enormous, but by its presence. It seemed alive, pulsing subtly with energy that Adan could feel even at a distance. As they approached, he noticed patterns shifting across its surface, responding to some unseen commands or stimuli. "The palace recognizes all who enter," General Koro stated, noticing Adan's gaze. "It is bonded to the royal bloodline, as all significant structures on Elisar are bonded to their caretakers." "It's alive," Adan asked. "It is aware," Koro corrected, "as is much of our world. Your kind builds dead things and calls it civilization. We grow our world in partnership with it." They passed through archways that opened without physical contact, traversed corridors that adjusted their dimensions as they walked, and finally reached a vast circular chamber whose ceiling opened to the sky above. In its center stood Queen Virel. Her wings fully extended a span that must have reached 15 feet as she conversed with a group of Elvari officials, whose colorations and wing patterns indicated various ranks and functions that Adan couldn't decipher. She turned as they entered, and the officials immediately bowed and retreated to the periphery of the chamber. Adan Cross. She spoke his name, taking on an almost musical quality in her harmonic voice. "Welcome to Elisar. I trust your journey was comfortable." Adan remained silent, assessing. Up close, the queen was even more imposing. Her height, the subtle glow that seemed to emanate from beneath her skin, the way her wings created air currents that carried her unique scent toward him. "You wonder why you are here," she continued, unfazed by his silence. "Why, among all the specimens at Nexus Prime, I chose a human." "The thought crossed my mind," Adan finally responded. A fleeting expression, something almost like amusement, crossed her perfect features. "You will learn in time. For now, you will be given freedom within the inner palace grounds. General Koro's guards will ensure your safety and compliance." "Compliance with what?" Adan asked. "With the coming examinations," Queen Virel replied. "Your genetic structure and neural patterns are of great interest to us. Dr. Nyla will oversee the process." Before Adan could question further, the chamber's peaceful atmosphere shattered. A high-pitched whine cut through the air, followed by multiple explosions from the palace perimeter. General Koro moved instantly, his wings extending to their full span, as he positioned himself between the queen and the chamber's entrance. "Breach in Sectors 7 and 12. Your Majesty," reported a guard who rushed in. "Suspected Void Sect terrorists. They've disabled the outer defenses." "Evacuate Her Majesty to the secure chamber," Koro ordered, drawing a weapon that seemed to materialize from his armor. The queen's expression remained impassive. "No. The secure chamber can be sealed from outside, if this is a targeted assassination that would play into their strategy." More explosions rocked the palace closer now. The chamber's lighting flickered, and Adan felt a strange vibration through the floor, as though the living structure was in pain. "Your Majesty, I must insist," General Koro began. "A diversion." Adan interrupted, his tactical training kicking in as he analyzed the pattern of explosions. "They're creating chaos to mask a single infiltration team." He turned to the queen. "Do you have a secondary exit from this chamber, preferably one that's rarely used?" Koro bristled. "You dare to question our security protocols?" "He's correct," the queen said, studying Adan with renewed interest. "The attack pattern aligns with Void Sect techniques." She gestured toward a section of wall that appeared solid. "There is an ancient passage there unused for centuries. As if responding to her thought, the wall rippled and revealed a narrow corridor. The queen moved toward it, but Adden noticed a subtle shift in the light patterns above them, almost imperceptible, but to his combat-trained eyes, unmistakable. "Down!" he shouted, lunging forward and tackling the queen, just as a beam of energy sliced through the space where she had stood. They rolled across the floor as General Koro and his guards returned fire toward a ceiling panel that had retracted to reveal an assassin. The queen's wings instinctively enfolded around them, both creating a protective cocoon. For a moment, Adden found himself pressed against her close enough to feel the strange dual rhythm of her heartbeats and smell the alien sweetness of her breath. "You have quick instincts, human," she whispered, her harmonic voice vibrating through his chest. "Special Forces training," he replied, acutely aware of how fragile human skin felt against the armored resilience of her wings. The sound of combat died down, and General Koro's voice penetrated their enclosed space. "The threat is neutralized, Your Majesty." The queen's wings unfurled, and she rose gracefully, extending a hand to help Addan up. The assembled Elvari stared in shock, not at the assassination attempt, but at the sight of their queen touching a human voluntarily. "It seems I made a wise investment at the auction," she said, loud enough for all to hear. "General Koro, double the palace security and begin an investigation, and arrange proper quarters for Addan Cross." Her gaze returned to Adden, those opalescent eyes, studying him with new intensity. "No longer in the guest wing, but in the royal advisor section." Koro's wings stiffened in obvious disapproval, but he bowed deeply. "As you command, Your Majesty." As Addan was led away, he caught Dr. Nyla watching him with an expression of scientific fascination, as though he had just become an even more interesting specimen than before. Weeks passed, and Addan's position within the royal palace evolved in ways he could never have predicted. Each day included sessions with Dr. Nyla, whose examinations became increasingly focused on his neurological responses and genetic markers. Between these sessions, he was granted access to parts of the palace normally forbidden to non-Elvari, including the vast library of ancestral knowledge, where biological records dating back millennia were stored in crystalline matrices. It was during one such visit to the library that Queen Virel joined him unexpectedly, dismissing her attendance with a gesture. "You've adapted well to life on Elisar," she observed, watching as he manipulated the crystal interfaces with growing skill. "Most species find our technology disorienting." Addan nodded, closing the historical record he'd been reviewing. "Humans are adaptable. It's our one evolutionary advantage." "Not your only advantage," she corrected, moving closer. "Your minds function differently from any species in the Federation. Where most develop along predictable paths, logical or emotional, analytical or intuitive, human consciousness blends these elements in chaotic but productive ways." "Is that why I'm here?" Addan asked directly. "As a psychological study." The queen's wings shifted, catching light in patterns that seemed to reflect her thoughts. "In part," she admitted. "The Elvari have spent thousands of years perfecting our genetic lineage. We have enhanced every biological system, optimized neural efficiency, extended lifespan, and eradicated disease." "Sounds ideal," Adden commented, though. Something in her tone suggested otherwise. "Perfection has costs," she said quietly. "With each generation we have lost something. The ability to dream, to create art that isn't mathematically derived, to feel deeply." She turned abruptly. "Come with me. There is something you should see." She led him deeper into the palace than he had yet ventured, through corridors that seemed ancient compared to the living architecture of the outer sections. Finally, they reached a chamber sealed by doors of actual metal, a rarity on Elisar. "This is the Hall of Genetic Memory," she explained, as the doors opened to her touch. "Every sovereign since the genetic reformation has contributed their complete neural pattern and genetic code to this repository." Inside, thousands of crystalline pillars rose from floor to ceiling, each pulsing with a subtle internal light. The queen approached one near the center, older than those surrounding it, its light dimmer, but somehow richer in color. This is Sovereign Valerian from 12 generations past, before the final phase of genetic optimization. She placed her hand on the crystal, and it flared to life, projecting images that swirled around them, fragments of memories, emotions, experiences. Adan gasped as the images washed over him. Unlike the cool precision of modern Elvari expression, these memories burned with passion, joy, grief, love, rage, emotions so raw and powerful they seemed almost primitive. We were not always as you see us now. Queen Virel continued, her voice softer than he had ever heard it. We sacrificed these chaotic elements for longevity and power. Our scientists believed emotion was inefficient, that dreams wasted neural resources better allocated to rational thought. She released the crystal, and the vibrant memories faded. They succeeded too well. Now the royal bloodline is failing. Each generation produces fewer offspring. Those that survive lack the neural plasticity needed for true innovation. We have engineered ourselves into an evolutionary dead end. Understanding dawned on Adan. And humans represent the opposite path. All emotion and adaptability at the cost of physical fragility. Precisely, Queen Virel turned to face him fully. When I saw you at the auction, I recognized something. A resilience that has nothing to do with physical strength. The same quality that allowed your species to survive on a single planet, with no genetic engineering yet, still reach the stars. Adan processed this revelation, the pieces falling into place. So I'm here as part of some biological research program, to help find a way to reintroduce these lost traits into Elvari genetics. That was my initial purpose, she acknowledged. But there have been unexpected developments. As if to demonstrate, she reached toward him, slowly, giving him time to withdraw if he chose. When he remained still, her fingers made contact with his temple. The touch sent a jolt through his nervous system, not painful, but intensely foreign, as though a current of alien consciousness had suddenly interfaced with his own. Images flashed in his mind, not his memories, but hers. The weight of rule, the isolation of genetic superiority, the subtle but constant fear that she would be the last of her line, the final sovereign of a dying empire. Just as quickly, the connection broke and Queen Virel stepped back, her wings fluttering in what appeared to be surprise. That should not have happened, she said, a note of genuine wonder in her harmonic voice. Direct neural transference between Elvari and other species is theoretically impossible. Adan took an unsteady breath, still processing the fragments of her consciousness that had briefly merged with his. What does it mean? It means, Adan Cross, that you are even more valuable than I initially believed. Her opalescent eyes studied him with new intensity. And that General Koro's concerns about your influence may not be entirely unfounded. As if summoned by his name, the chamber doors opened to reveal General Koro, his wings extended, in a posture that Adan had come to recognize as aggressive alertness. Your Majesty, he said, his gaze shifting suspiciously between them. The Royal Council has convened an emergency session and requests your immediate presence. Regarding what matter? The Queen asked, though her tone suggested she already knew. Koro's wings tightened against his back. Regarding the human, Your Majesty, and the rumors of neural compatibility tests being conducted without council approval. Queen Virel's expression remained impassive, but Adan felt a ripple of tension emanate from her, an emotional response that would have been undetectable had they not just shared that momentary connection. Return to your quarters, Adan, she instructed, her formal tone restored. We will continue our discussion at a later time. As Adan was escorted away by silent guards, he caught General Koro's final words to the Queen. The Council fears you are becoming compromised, Your Majesty. That your interest in this human goes beyond scientific inquiry. The Queen's response floated after him, harmonics layered with subtle warning. The Council would do well to remember who wears the Sovereign's wings, General, and what happened to the last council that forgot their place. Back in his quarters, Luxurious, but still monitored, Adden paced restlessly. The brief neural connection with the Queen had left him with more than just glimpses of her memories. Some kind of link remained tenuous, but persistent like a radio signal at the edge of reception. Through it, he sensed her tension, her carefully controlled anger at the Council's presumption, and beneath it all, a surprising fear, not for herself, but for him. Dr. Nyla arrived as night fell her usual clinical detachment, replaced by barely concealed urgency. "The Council has demanded complete neural and genetic scans of your system," she informed him, without preamble. "They believe the Queen's unusual interest in you may be the result of some form of mental manipulation." Adan laughed bitterly. "They think I'm controlling her. I'm the prisoner here." "Are you?" Dr. Nyla challenged. "You move freely through the royal wing. The Queen shares knowledge with you that most Elvari will never access. And today," she hesitated. "Today, witnesses report seeing Her Majesty establish direct neural contact with you. Something that should be physiologically impossible." "It wasn't intentional," Adan defended. "It just happened." Dr. Nyla's expression shifted to one of scientific fascination. "Describe the experience." Reluctantly, Adan explained the momentary transfer of memories and emotions. As he spoke, the physician's wings trembled slightly, an Elvari expression of excitement or discovery. "This confirms my theories," she said more to herself than to him. "Your genetic structure contains recombination elements we lost centuries ago. Elements that allow for neural plasticity and adaptive response." She focused on him intently. "The Queen's interest is not mere scientific curiosity, nor is it the political strategy the Council suspects. It is biological necessity." "What do you mean?" Adan asked, though a part of him already understood. "The royal bloodline is failing Adan. Each generation becomes more brittle, less viable. The Queen has no heir, and genetic projections suggest she may be unable to produce one with any current Elvari lineage." Dr. Nyla's voice lowered. "But your DNA contains patterns that complement the specific genetic gaps in royal Elvari code." The implications hit Adan like a physical blow. "She wants me as a breeding stock to father some hybrid heir." "It is more complex than that," Dr. Nyla corrected. "Elvari reproduction has not been fully biological for centuries. It involves genetic merging, neural pattern synchronization, and technological intervention. But yes, your genetic material, and more importantly your neural patterns, could be the key to saving the royal bloodline from extinction." Before Adan could process this fully, alarms blared throughout the palace. Dr. Nyla's wings extended in alarm as her communication implant activated. "The Council has moved against the Queen," she gasped. "They've declared her judgment compromised and have ordered you placed in biological stasis for study." "They're staging a coup?" Adan asked incredulously. "Not precisely. The Elvari Royal Contingency Protocol allows for temporary transfer of power if the sovereign displays signs of genetic degradation or neural instability." Her wings folded tightly against her back, a gesture of decision made. "But they are wrong. The neural link you describe isn't evidence of deterioration. It's the first sign of a new evolutionary pathway." She moved to a wall panel and pressed her palm against it. A section of the floor retracted, revealing a passage downward. "This leads to the ancient sections of the palace below the current security grid. Find the Queen. The neural link may help you locate her if you focus on it." "Why are you helping me?" Adan asked, as he moved toward the passage. Dr. Nyla's expression turned solemn. "Because I am a healer, and the Elvari are a dying species. Sometimes survival requires change, even when change feels like surrender." She pressed something into his hand, a small, crystalline device. "This will help you navigate. Now go." As the passage sealed above him, Adan descended into the ancient heart of the palace, guided by the faint pulse of connection to a queen who had purchased him as property, yet somehow had begun to see him as salvation. The ancient corridors beneath the palace seemed to breathe with age, the walls inscribed with swirling patterns that occasionally glowed in response to his presence. Adan moved cautiously, following both the guidance of Dr. Nyla's device and the strengthening tug of his connection to the Queen. After what felt like hours of navigating the labyrinthine passages, he emerged into a vast circular chamber, unlike anything he had seen in the modern sections of the palace. While the upper levels featured living architecture of crystal and light, this space was built of actual stone, carved with intricate symbols that pulsed with a dull blue luminescence. At the chamber's center stood Queen Virel, her wings, fully extended hands, pressed against a towering monolith of obsidian crystal. "You found your way," she said, without turning her harmonics deeper than usual. "The link between us grows stronger." "Dr. Nyla helped me escape," Adan explained, approaching slowly. "She said the council has moved against you." A predictable response to an unpredictable situation. The Queen finally turned to face him, and Adan was struck by a subtle change in her appearance. The opalescent quality of her eyes had intensified, and beneath her skin, patterns of light shifted like liquid silver. "They fear what they cannot control." "And what exactly is happening between us?" Adan asked, gesturing to his head. "This connection. I can feel your emotions catch glimpses of your thoughts. A neural resonance that should be impossible given our different evolutionary paths." She moved toward him with fluid grace. "Yet it exists, growing stronger each day. The ancient texts call it the synchronous pairing, a phenomenon not seen since before the genetic reformation." A distant explosion shook dust from the ancient ceiling. The coup was advancing through the palace above them. "We don't have much time," the Queen continued. "The Council will use biological stasis to separate us, breaking the neural bond before it can fully form. I cannot allow that." "Why?" "Because you need my genetic material to save your bloodline." Adan challenged the revelation from Dr. Nyla, still raw in his mind. A flicker of surprise crossed her features. "Nyla told you?" "Yes, that was my initial interest. But this," she gestured between them, "this transcends mere biological necessity. The neural bond is reshaping both our minds, creating something neither human nor Elvari." Another explosion closer now. The Queen moved decisively to a control panel embedded in the ancient stone, activating sequences that caused the chamber to hum with energy. "This chamber houses the oldest technology on Elissar," she explained, as archways around the perimeter began to glow. "The memory nexus where the experiences of every sovereign are stored in their purest form, not just data, but actual consciousness imprints." "What are you doing?" Adan asked, watching, as the energy patterns in the room intensified. "Activating the full neural interface. If we complete the bond before the Council reaches us, even biological stasis won't be able to break it." Her eyes locked with his. "But it must be voluntary. The interface will merge our consciousness temporarily, allowing us to share not just surface thoughts, but complete memories, knowledge, even sensory experiences." Adan hesitated. "And if I refuse?" "Then I will face the Council alone, and you will likely spend the rest of your life as a laboratory specimen." Her wings shifted, catching the ancient light. "I am not offering freedom, Adan Cross. I am offering partnership." Before he could respond, the chamber doors burst open. General Koro led a contingent of guards, their weapons trained on both Adan and the Queen. "Step away from the human, Your Majesty." Koro demanded, his wings flared in aggressive display. "The Council has ordered his immediate containment." "The Council has overstepped its authority." Queen Virel replied, her voice resonating with harmonics that made the very air vibrate. "I am still sovereign of Elissar." "A sovereign compromised by alien influence," Koro countered. He signaled to his guards. "Secure the human. Use non-lethal force." As the guards advanced, Adan made his decision. He reached out and grasped the Queen's extended hand. The moment their skin made contact, the chamber's energy field intensified 100-fold. Light erupted from the ancient monolith, enveloping them both in a cocoon of pulsing energy that repelled the approaching guards. The neural connection that had been a tenuous link exploded into full communion. Adan gasped as his mind was flooded with the Queen's memories, centuries of experience compressed into moments of overwhelming intensity. He saw the weight of rule through her eyes, felt the gradual emotional deadening of the Elvari race, understood the desperate genetic calculations that had driven her to seek him out. Simultaneously, his own memories poured into her consciousness: childhood, on Earth military training, the horror of the Proxima War, the resilience of human spirit in the face of overwhelming odds, the cruel irony of fighting for human freedom only to end up as property on an auction block. Through their joined minds, Adan felt the Queen's genuine surprise at the depth and complexity of human emotion, the chaotic beauty of an unengineered consciousness. And beneath it all, her growing fascination with him specifically, not just as a genetic solution, but as an individual whose mind complemented her own in ways she had never anticipated. In that moment of complete vulnerability, neither fully human nor Elvari, they accessed something deeper: the ancestral memories stored in the Nexus. Generations of sovereigns before the genetic reformation, when the Elvari still dreamed and created and loved with unrestrained passion. The memories surged through them, both reawakening neural pathways, long dormant in the Queen's engineered mind. The energy field pulsed once more, then stabilized into a sustainable bubble that kept General Koro and his forces at bay. Inside it, Adan and Varel stood with hands still joined, both forever changed by what they had shared. "I understand now," Adan said softly. "Your people haven't evolved. They've devolved, sacrificing the very traits that made advancement possible in the first place. And humans retain those traits at the cost of physical optimization," she replied, her voice carrying new emotional depth. "Together, we represent what both our species have lost and what they might become." General Koro, unable to penetrate the energy field, activated his communication implant. "The Royal Contingency Team is en route with neural disruptors. This aberration will end shortly, Your Majesty." "No, General." "The Queen," responded, her voice amplified by the chamber's acoustics. "What ends today is the fallacy that genetic purity equals evolutionary success." She released Adan's hand and approached the edge of the energy field, addressing Koro and his guards directly. "I invoke the right of sovereign challenge, as is my right under laws that predate the Council itself." Koro's wings stiffened in shock. "The blood compatibility trial. That ritual hasn't been performed in 1,000 years. Yet it remains the ultimate test of sovereign fitness," Queen Virel countered. "If I am truly compromised, I will fail. If not, my authority is absolute even over the Council." "And the human," Koro demanded, glaring at Adan. "Will stand as my chosen," the Queen declared, "as permitted by the ancient laws." The announcement sent visible shock through the assembled Elvari. The energy field dissipated as the Queen made a dismissive gesture. "Prepare the arena of judgment," she commanded. "At tomorrow's first light we will settle this matter, according to the oldest traditions of Elisar." As the guards reluctantly withdrew, General Koro lingered, his gaze fixed on Adan with undisguised contempt. "No off-worlder has ever survived the blood trial," he said coldly. "Particularly no species as fragile as yours." When they were alone again, Adan turned to the Queen. "What exactly did you just volunteer me for?" "The most sacred ritual in Elvari culture," she explained. "A test of physical prowess, mental acuity, and spiritual harmony that dates back to before our technological ascension. By naming you my chosen, I've declared that our minds are compatible at the most fundamental level. And if we fail this trial..." Her expression grew solemn. "Then the Council gains complete authority. You will be placed in stasis, and I will be subjected to genetic resequencing to correct whatever they deem has gone wrong with my judgment." Adan absorbed this thinking tactically. "And our chances of success?" "Uncertain," she admitted. The trial was designed for Elvari biology and psychology. No other species has completed it. She hesitated. But the neural bond we've established changes the parameters. Through it, you can access my physical memories, combat techniques, sensory adaptations, biological responses that no human has ever experienced. And you get my chaotic human emotions and instincts, Adan added, beginning to understand. My adaptability. Precisely. For the first time since he'd met her, Queen Virel smiled a genuine expression that transformed her austere features. Together, we represent something entirely new. Neither purely Elvari, nor purely human. Adan found himself returning the smile despite the gravity of their situation. So much for being a simple genetic donor. You were never that, she replied softly. From the moment I saw you on the auction block standing proud despite your circumstances, I recognized something I had forgotten existed. A quality the Elvari sacrificed generations ago. What's that? Defiance, she said. The refusal to accept limitation even when encoded into your very DNA. Through their strengthened bond, he felt the sincerity behind her words and something more. A nascent emotion she herself was only beginning to recognize after centuries of genetic suppression of such inefficient responses. Rest now, she advised. Tomorrow we either change the course of two species forever, or end as laboratory specimens for the Council's edification. When you put it that way, Adan replied dryly, how can I refuse? Dawn on Elisar brought a spectacle unlike anything Adan had witnessed in his travels across the galaxy. The arena of judgment was actually a vast floating platform, anchored above the capital city, its surface shifting between solid matter and energy fields in patterns determined by some ancient programming. A crowd had gathered not just the royal council and court officials, but thousands of ordinary Elvari citizens, their wings creating a rippling sea of color as they filled the viewing platforms surrounding the arena. News of the Sovereign Challenge had spread overnight, and it seemed the entire planet wanted to witness this unprecedented event, their queen and a human facing the blood compatibility trial together. In the preparation chamber beneath the arena, Dr. Nyla made final adjustments to Adan's ceremonial attire, a form-fitting suit of material that responded to his body's electrical impulses, enhancing his natural movements, while providing minimal protection. The neural bond has progressed remarkably, she observed, scanning them both with her diagnostic tools. Your brainwave patterns are already showing synchronization at multiple frequencies. Will it be enough? Adan asked, testing the suit's responsiveness with practice movements. Dr. Nyla's expression remained clinical, but her wings betrayed concern in their subtle trembling. The trial consists of 3 challenges: physical dominance, mental resilience, and harmonic union. The first will test your body, the second your mind, and the third. She hesitated. The third will test the very compatibility the Queen has declared exists between you. Meaning that if the neural bond is genuine, you will succeed. If not, she left the consequences unspoken. Queen Virel entered her ceremonial armor, gleaming with embedded crystals that seemed to pulse in time with her heartbeats. Her wings had been adorned with metallic filaments that caught the light, transforming them into living weapons. It is time, she announced, her harmonic voice, pitched to convey confidence despite the danger ahead. As they ascended to the arena's surface, the crowd's murmuring rose to a crescendo, then fell to absolute silence as General Koro stepped forward to announce the commencement of the trial. Today, Her Majesty Queen Virel invokes the right of sovereign challenge, with the human Adan Cross as her declared chosen. His voice boomed across the arena. As decreed by the ancient laws, they will face the 3 trials of the blood compatibility test. Should they succeed, the Queen's judgment regarding the human is declared sound. Should they fail, both shall be remanded to the Council's custody for appropriate measures. The arena surface shifted portions, rising to form barriers and obstacles, while others sank to create hazardous pits. From these pits emerged the first challenge, three massive creatures that resembled a hybrid of Earth's mantis and scorpion, their exoskeletons gleaming with metallic properties that suggested both biological and technological components. War Sentinels, the Queen explained through their mental link. Engineered predators from the pre-Reformation era. They can sense fear and weakness. Then let's not show any, Adan replied, settling into a combat stance as the creatures advanced with frightening speed. What followed was the most demanding physical combat of Adan's life. Even with his special forces training, the creature's strength and speed would have overwhelmed him instantly had he fought alone. But he wasn't alone. Through their neural bond, he accessed the Queen's centuries of combat knowledge, the precise vulnerabilities of the War Sentinels, the exact timing needed to evade their lightning-fast strikes. Simultaneously, the Queen drew on his human adaptability and unpredictable combat style, a guerrilla approach that confused creatures accustomed to the precise, calculated movements of Elvari opponents. Together, they moved in perfect synchronization, each compensating for the other's weaknesses. When a sentinel's strike penetrated Adan's guard, slashing his armor and drawing blood, the Queen felt his pain through their bond and instantly adapted her strategy, drawing the creature's attention while he recovered. When the final sentinel fell, the crowd's silence broke into a ripple of astonished murmurs. No one had expected the human to survive the first trial, let alone contribute equally to the victory. The arena shifted again, the physical obstacles receding as new structures emerged, crystalline formations that emitted pulsing patterns of energy and light. The Mind Labyrinth. Queen Virel communicated mentally. It will attack our consciousness directly, creating illusions designed to break our concentration and separate us. As they stepped into the labyrinth, reality fractured around them. Adan found himself suddenly alone, transported to what appeared to be the battlefield of Proxima Centauri, where he had witnessed the worst of the war. Around him, comrades died in the exact manner he remembered, crying out for help he couldn't provide. Through the bond, he felt the Queen experiencing her own nightmare, the slow degradation of her bloodline, watching generations of her people become more perfect, yet less alive, until she stood alone as the last of her kind. "It's not real," he projected through their connection. "These are manifestations of our deepest fears." "But based in truth," she replied, her mental voice strained. "This is the fate that awaits without change." The illusions intensified, becoming more personal. Adan saw himself back on the auction block, but this time with the Queen, coldly explaining that he had served his purpose as a genetic donor and was no longer needed. The false Queen looked at him with the same detached scientific interest he had first encountered, all warmth and connection erased. Simultaneously, Virel experienced abandonment of a different kind. Adan, choosing to return to his own kind, declaring the gulf between their species too great to bridge, leaving her to face extinction alone. In that moment of shared vulnerability, their bond deepened further. Instead of fighting the illusion separately, they opened their consciousness completely to each other, experiencing each other's fears directly. In doing so, they discovered the antidote to the labyrinth's power: absolute transparency, where no deception could take root. "Enough." They spoke in unison, their voices harmonizing in a way that seemed to shatter the very fabric of the illusions. The labyrinth dissolved around them, returning them to the physical arena where the astonished crowd watched in silence. General Koro's wings betrayed his shock. Never in recorded history had the Mind Labyrinth been defeated so quickly. He glanced toward the council members who sat rigidly in their elevated platform, their expressions unreadable, but their wings twitching with undisguised agitation. "The final trial," Koro announced, his voice slightly less confident than before. "The harmonic union." The arena cleared completely, leaving only a circular platform at its center. As Adan and the Queen approached it, the platform began to glow with patterns that shifted in response to their proximity. Ancient algorithms assessing their biological and neural compatibility, at the most fundamental level. This is the true purpose of the ritual, Queen Virel explained through their link. Not just a test of worthiness, but a direct measurement of genetic and neural harmony. It was how Elvari once chose their mates before reproduction became a clinical process. They stepped onto the platform together, and immediately Adin felt a powerful surge through his nervous system, as though every cell in his body was being scanned and evaluated. Through their bond, he experienced the Queen undergoing the same process, her genetically optimized system responding with precision to the ancient technology. The platform's glow intensified, changing color as it processed their combined data. Red shifted to purple, then blue, then a brilliant white that forced the audience to shield their eyes. "What does that mean?" Adan asked, mentally, feeling the surge of hope and validation from the Queen. "It means compatibility beyond anything the system has previously recorded," she replied, wonder evident in her mental voice. "Our differences are not obstacles, they're complementary patterns. Your chaos balances my order. My structure supports your adaptability." The white light coalesced into a holographic display visible to the entire arena, a double helix structure showing Elvari and human DNA sequencing in parallel with highlighted sections, where recombination was not only possible, but optimal. Even to Adan's limited understanding of genetics, the implications were clear. The offspring of such a union would carry the best of both species, Elvari's strength and longevity, combined with human adaptability and emotional capacity. The arena fell completely silent as the meaning of the display registered with the assembled Elvari. Then, from somewhere in the crowd, a single voice called out, "The sovereign's choice is validated." Others joined in the chant, growing until it echoed across the floating platform. Even members of the Royal Council appeared shaken by the undeniable evidence before them. Their wings folded in the Elvari gesture of acknowledgement and submission. General Koro stepped forward, his expression a complex mixture of disbelief and reluctant respect. "By the laws of the blood compatibility trial, Her Majesty's judgment is proven sound. The human Adin Cross is officially recognized as the Queen's chosen, with all rights and privileges thereof." Queen Virel turned to face the crowd, her wings extended to their full impressive span. "Today marks not the dilution of Elvari greatness, but its renewal," her harmonic voice projected across the arena. "For too long, we have mistaken uniformity for strength. True evolutionary success comes not from isolation, but from beneficial adaptation." She extended her hand to Adin, who took it without hesitation. Through their touch, the neural bond flared visibly, an aura of energy that surrounded them both. "The human race has joined the Galactic Federation as equals," she continued. "Today, we acknowledge that equality in the most profound way possible, by recognizing that our future may depend on what they can teach us about resilience, emotion, and adaptation." As they left the arena together, Adan felt the weight of history settling around them. He had entered Elisar as property, a curiosity purchased on a whim. Now, he stood as something unprecedented, a human officially joined to a sovereign queen, not just as consort, but as genetic and neural partner. "This changes everything," he said quietly, as they returned to the palace. "That," Queen Virel replied with the smile that was becoming less rare each day, "was precisely the point." The seasons on Elisar shifted through their cycle, shorter than Earth's, but more varied in their expression, as the planet's unusual atmospheric composition created weather patterns of breathtaking beauty and occasional ferocity. Through summer's crystalline rains and autumn's luminescent mists, Adan adapted to his new role as the Queen's chosen. It was a position without precedent or clear definition, which granted him both freedom and challenge. The Royal Council, having accepted the results of the blood trial, nevertheless watched his every move with wary attention. General Koro maintained a professional distance, his previous contempt tempered by grudging respect after witnessing Adan's performance in the arena. Dr. Nyla became his most consistent ally, her scientific curiosity about the ongoing neural bond overriding any cultural prejudice. Under her guidance, both Adan and the Queen underwent regular examinations that documented the unprecedented changes occurring in both their physiologies. The neural synchronization continues to deepen. She reported during one such session, reviewing holographic displays of their brain activity. Areas of the Queen's brain that have been dormant for generations, particularly those associated with dreaming and emotional processing, are showing increased activity. "I've noticed," Adan confirmed. She laughed yesterday. Actually laughed at something one of the courtiers said. Dr. Nyla's wings fluttered in excitement. "And you, Adan. Your cellular regeneration rate has increased by 37%. Your bone density is showing subtle changes that mimic Elvari structure. The bond is affecting you both at the fundamental genetic level." These physical changes were merely the surface expression of a far deeper transformation. Living within the Queen's court, Adan had become her most trusted advisor, bringing human perspective to decisions that affected millions across the 7 systems. His military background proved unexpectedly valuable, as he introduced strategies based on adaptation rather than overwhelming force. More privately, their relationship evolved in ways neither had anticipated. The neural bond that had begun as a scientific anomaly became the foundation for a connection deeper than either had experienced before. Through it, they shared not just thoughts, but sensations, emotions, and perspectives that transcended the barriers between their species. When Queen Virel finally announced their formal union, not merely as political allies, but as life partners, the response across Elisar was mixed, but predominantly positive. The younger generation in particular embraced the symbolism of their partnership, seeing in it hope for a future that valued diversity over purity. The wedding ceremony blended ancient Elvari traditions with elements of human custom that Adan recalled from Earth. They exchanged vows in both languages, their words carrying layered meanings that reflected the complexity of their union. "I choose you," Virel promised in the formal Elvari tongue, her wings extended in the traditional gesture of commitment. "Not for advantage or alliance, but for the harmony we create together." "I choose you," Adan replied in kind, having mastered enough of the language to honor her heritage. "Not despite our differences, but because of them." The neural bond flared visibly as they completed the ritual, surrounding them in an aura of light that left even the most skeptical witnesses in awe. Months passed, and Adan found himself settled into a role he could never have imagined during his military days. Part diplomat, part strategist, part scientific subject, and part husband to the most powerful being in the 7 systems. The irony of having gone from captive to consort was not lost on him, though the path between those states had been far from simple. It was during the planning of a diplomatic mission to Earth, the first official state visit by the Elvari sovereign to humanity's homeworld, that Dr. Nyla requested an urgent meeting with both of them. "I've completed the latest analysis of your combined genetic profiles," she announced, her wings vibrating with barely contained excitement. "The results are unprecedented." She activated a holographic display showing complex genetic sequences. "The neural bond has facilitated genetic adaptation at rates we previously thought impossible. Your DNA structures have developed complementary patterns that theoretically allow for successful reproduction." Queen Virel's normally composed features registered genuine shock. Natural reproduction without laboratory intervention. Not entirely natural by pre-technology standards, Dr. Nyla clarified. Some medical assistance would still be required, but the fundamental compatibility now exists where none should be possible. Adan studied the display, recognizing enough from his crash course in Elvari genetics to understand the significance. "You're saying we could have a child, a human Elvari hybrid?" A new beginning," the Queen said softly, her hand finding his. Through their bond, he felt her complex emotions, hope mingled with fear, scientific curiosity, with profound personal longing. Dr. Nyla nodded. The child would carry the strengths of both species, Elvari physical resilience and longevity combined with human neural plasticity and emotional capacity. In essence, the perfect heir to bridge two evolutionary paths. The implications extended far beyond their personal relationship. Such a child would represent a living symbol of cooperation between species, a biological bridge between humanity, and one of the galaxy's most advanced civilizations. The Council will have concerns, Adan noted, already anticipating the political ramifications. The Council will adapt, Queen Varel replied, with newfound firmness. As will all of us if we wish to thrive, rather than merely survive. The decision once made, moved forward with the efficiency characteristic of Elvari society, combined with the emotional certainty Adan had brought to the Queen's life. Medical protocols were established, ceremonial announcements prepared, and diplomatic channels opened to share the news with Earth's representatives. Not everyone celebrated. Conservative factions within Elvari society protested what they saw as contamination of their genetic purity. Certain human, religious, and political groups expressed horror at the prospect of interspecies breeding. Yet, for each voice of opposition, others rose in support. Scientists excited by the evolutionary implications, cultural leaders who recognized the diplomatic advantages, ordinary citizens who simply appreciated the romantic narrative of two beings from different worlds finding connection. 9 months later, a compromise between human and Elvari gestation periods, Dr. Nyla presided over the birth of the first human Elvari child in history. A daughter with her mother's silvery skin and nascent wing structures combined with features that unmistakably echoed her human father. "She's perfect," Adan whispered, cradling the infant with a tenderness that belied his military background. Through their bond, he shared the overwhelming emotions of the moment with Varel, who experienced human-style parental love in all its chaotic intensity for the first time. "Her wings," Dr. Nyla noted with scientific wonder. "Look at the coloration. Unlike the obsidian black of royal Elvari wings, or the various monochromatic hues of other bloodlines, the child's developing wings showed an iridescent quality that shifted through multiple colors as they caught the light." "Chromatomorphic adaptation," the doctor explained. "A trait mentioned in pre-Reformation texts, but thought lost to our species for millennia. The ability to change wing color in response to emotional states." Queen Varel reached out to touch her daughter's tiny wings, watching as they subtly shifted from silver to blue at her touch. "The color of joy," she murmured, recognizing the significance through ancestral memory. "She feels emotions as our most distant ancestors did, without suppression or control." "What will you name her?" Dr. Nyla asked. Adan and Varel exchanged a glance, having discussed this question extensively through both verbal and neural communication. "Lyra," the Queen announced. "From human mythology, the small but brilliant constellation that bridged two worlds in ancient stories." "And in our language," Adan added, "it sounds like the Elvari word for new beginning." News of Princess Lyra's birth spread rapidly through the Seven Systems, and beyond, reaching Earth within days, through the Galactic Federation's communication network. The diplomatic impact was immediate and profound. Formal relations between humans and Elvari, strengthened trade agreements, expanded cultural exchanges initiated. More personally, Adan found himself adapting to fatherhood with the same flexibility that had allowed him to survive capture auction and integration into an alien society. Through the neural bond, he and Varel shared the experience of parenthood in a way unique in galactic history, each feeling the other's perspective and responses, creating a family dynamic without precedent. As Lyra grew, she exhibited the best qualities of both bloodlines. Her physical development proceeded at the accelerated Elvari pace, while her emotional and creative capacities flourished in ways not seen in pure Elvari children for generations. By her first birthday, she had begun to speak in both languages, her wings changing color with each new discovery or emotion. It was during the public celebration of this milestone that General Koro, who had gradually transitioned from skeptic to reluctant ally, approached Adan on one of the palace balconies overlooking the capital city. "I was wrong about you, human." He admitted, his wings held in the formal position of respect. "Your presence has strengthened, not weakened, our civilization." Adan nodded, accepting the acknowledgement without gloating. It was never about superior or inferior, just different paths with different strengths. "A lesson my people needed to learn," Koro conceded. "Genetic purity brought us to the brink of stagnation. Your chaotic human influence has reminded us that adaptation requires change, not just refinement." Their conversation was interrupted by the arrival of an Earth diplomatic contingent, the first official human delegation to visit the Elvari royal palace. As Adan stepped forward to greet his fellow humans in his capacity as royal consort, he felt the weight of his journey press upon him, from prisoner of war to auction property, to the father of a new evolutionary lineage. The lead diplomat bowed formally to Queen Virel, then turned to Adan with barely concealed awe. "Commander Cross, your story has become something of a legend back home. The human who changed an empire." "That's giving me too much credit," Adan replied, glancing toward Virel and little Lyra, whose wings were currently shifting through rainbow hues as she observed the fascinating new arrivals. "The change was already necessary. I was just the catalyst." Later that evening, as they stood on the royal balcony, watching twin moons rise over Elisar's crystalline landscape, Virel wrapped her wings around Adan in the intimate gesture that had become their private embrace. "When I saw you on that auction block," she confessed through their bond, "I recognized something I couldn't name, a quality our people had engineered away centuries ago." "And what was that?" Adan asked, though, through their connection, he already knew the answer. "Hope," she replied simply. "The irrational, inefficient, gloriously chaotic human capacity to hope beyond evidence and fight beyond reason." Below them, the capital city glittered with lights both ancient and modern, while above, the first ships of the newly established Earth-Elisar Cultural Exchange Program descended through the atmosphere. A diplomatic aide approached, respectfully bowing before addressing them. "Your Majesties, the Federation representatives, request your perspective on the new interspecies cooperation protocols." Adan smiled, thinking of how far both their species had come, and how far they might go together. As he stepped forward to address this latest challenge, he couldn't resist a final thought directed through their neural bond. "They called us fragile. Turns out, that's where our strength was hiding all along."